Welcome everyone to the show. I'm your host, Jody Taves. I'm the founder of Explora Creative, and today we are chatting with Lindsay Sullivan of the Small Business Photographer, and we're going to be talking about branding photography today, and I'm very excited about this. It's going to be value-packed, I'm sure. So, Lindsay, I'm going to let you introduce yourself. Just tell us a little bit about yourself, how you got into photography, and what the Small Business Photographer does.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Jody, for having me here. And hello,
Yeah.
everyone. Yeah, my name is Lindsay Sullivan. I'm the founder and CEO of the Small Business Photographer. And I really help entrepreneurs attract their dream clients with brand images that capture their personality, stand out from the competition, and tell their brand story. Do that through brand photography sessions and really get deep into the brand so we can bring it to life and show it in photos. So, my history of how I got into it is I actually got into it through something that was not even brand photography, it was cosplay photography, which is like where people dress up in costume. And I started photographing them at the expos. And one of the cosplayers loved her photo so much, she started having me do full brand set or full photography sessions with her. And then eventually she got a bunch of friends together and was like, yeah, we want to have this big photo shoot and we'll pay you. So that's how
That,
my business was born, actually.
that's awesome.
Yeah. And then I really like the storytelling aspect of it because you have a character and you had to figure out locations and poses and all of that kind of stuff to fit the character. And so when I started getting into other genres of photography, I realized that I liked brand photography too because it had that storytelling aspect, right? Like we're picking locations to show what people's businesses are all about and poses that help show their personality and bringing out that sort of authentic smiles and expressions and showing what they do and helping people understand what's unique about them. So that whole storytelling aspect was there in brand photography as well. So yeah, that's why I ended up niching down into brand photography. It's just I really love that storytelling side of things.
Yeah, I love that. I love that you connected like the cosplay storytelling into the branding photography as
Yeah.
well. Yeah, amazing. Well, like it doesn't seem like when you just look at it from the
Yeah.
outside, you don't really understand what the connection would be, but that's awesome.
Hmm. Yeah.
So tell us exactly what brand photography is. Like, how is it different from traditional photography?
Yeah, so brand photography is different from, say, traditional portraiture and that kind of stuff, in that there's a lot of strategy that goes into it. So before we even do a photography session, we want to look at what do you need photos for? Do you need them to go with landing pages? Do you want to show people behind the scenes? Do you need images for social media? Your website, all of those kinds of things. And you can actually create images to support, every service that you offer on your website, for example. You can have images of you or your team working with people doing those services. And it just establishes so much more trust when it's you in the images and your team as opposed to a generic stock image that other people have on their sites too.
Yeah.
So 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 yeah, the idea is to really tell a story with the brand photography, to show the brand, show what your business is all about. And then there's also a personal brand element too that can come out as well in terms of what your personality is like, what it's like to work with you. The key is, like, sometimes people will come to me because their existing photos, there's a disconnect there. They're like maybe stuffy, or they just don't show the brand or their personality. And so they come to me because they want someone that can actually pull out that kind of stuff, the personality, the different aspects of the brand. Even, like, for example, like one of my clients, her original images were very serious. Nothing wrong with serious if that's the brand. But when I asked her, what words do you want people to describe your business with, like what words would they use? And she's like, oh, well, fun is one of them. And I was like, okay, if we're going to have fun as one of those key qualities of the business and the experience, then there needs to be some smiling happening and some laughter, and people, should look like they're having fun. So that's what I mean by the branding and making it really specific to each business, because some businesses fun is not going to be the word. It's going to be serenity, or it's going to be corporate executive, super professional.
Yeah, yeah. Or
So
like high
there's
performance
yeah,
or
high
something like
performance.
that. Yeah.
Exactly. So there's different qualities to the business. And so once you figure out what those are, then we can actually create images that support that, so that people look at the images, they can get that vibe off of it and get a really good feel for what the business is all about.
Why is custom brand photography important for small businesses, particularly in that health and wellness field?
Major reasons is because it helps you stand out. So there's a lot of health and wellness, companies and things like that. So why are you different? And so having the brand photography to show why you're different that can be really important, whether it's, the experience you give clients, the personality of the team, the type of services you offer. Like maybe you offer different services that most other people don't offer in that circle, or you offer them in a different way,
Mhm.
those kinds of things. So it's really important to have the custom brand photography, because then you can bring that to life. And also just having you and your team in there makes you different, right? No one else
Yeah.
is going to have photos of you and your team. You're not going to find three health and wellness companies with the same photos, which you can if you're using stock,
Hmm.
stock photography. So you're going to be unique from that matter alone, just having images of you and your team. But also you establish more trust, right? When you have images of you in there, people can imagine themselves working with you. One of my chiropractor clients, he told me that people, before they even get to the clinic, as soon as they walk in their door, they're like, I already feel like I know this place because I've seen the photos, I've seen the vibe, I've seen you working with clients. Like they already feel like they know the service provider they're going to see. So yeah, that's why it's really good to have custom photography.
Oh yeah, I love that. And I agree. I feel like we all know what the stock photos are. It's pretty obvious when you're using stock photos, and it gives people a preview of the experience, right? So they don't like there's no
Mm-hmm.
surprises when they have this custom photography on their website, on their social media, and then when you walk into that space, like you said, it already feels like you've been there. You already had that connection to a place that you've never even been, or to like people that you've never seen in real life. It's like there's already a connection, there's
Exactly.
already trust and like rapport built through
Exactly.
the images. Yeah. Yeah,
Totally. And
that's
actually adding to that too, if you do, so some businesses do a personal brand element, some don't. But if you do bring the personal element into it too, for say social media, like let's say you have different hobbies, you love hiking, you love gardening, those kinds of things. If you actually get some images of that as well and put that on your social media, that really creates a lot of engagement, and people get to feel like they know the person behind the brand. So you're no longer just the chiropractor or the physiotherapist. You're like,
Mhm.
so and so who loves gardening, and then people are like, oh yeah, I love gardening too, or I love hiking, or it just makes it less of just like a service provider, more of this is an actual person, and that just really helps with trust, helps people feel more comfortable.
Extracurricular activity or like those,
Yeah,
yeah, like those
I,
lifestyle shots.
I'd say it kind of depends on the brand, but yeah, a lot of them do, just because then they can speak to that. So,
Cool.
and sometimes sometimes things go hand in hand. Like I worked with a blog writing company, and they love books.
Mm.
Obviously, they love writing and creativity and all that kind of stuff. So it's not a stretch to see that they would love books. But I just one of the things they love is reading fiction books and stuff like that. So we got some images of that as well. So then on social media they can post, what are you reading this month? And I love reading this, and it's one of my favorite things to do. And you just get that connection with people. So yeah, it is fun if you can add in a little bit of that. And that's the benefit to brand photography sessions that are, a couple hours to even a full day, is you can visit multiple locations and get a lot of that variety, and actually tell more of a story,
Mhm.
because you're able to get some of that personal brand stuff. You're getting behind the scenes of your business. You're getting a bunch of different things, and then you've got a lot of content that really can talk about your business and you.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Well, how do you figure out what your story is? Like, do you help someone figure out the story before they get into a session, or do they need to have that figured out? Where do you even start with like storytelling and photography?
yeah, I think there's a couple different things to look at. One is oftentimes, if you're depending on how you're going to use the images,
Mm.
right? So if you're using them for your website, then there's a lot of storytelling around what services you offer. So the storytelling around that would be maybe say a clinic owner working with the client. So a physiotherapist, for example, actually working with the client in action,
Mhm.
and so that kind of tells the story of what he or she does, and you can see it happening in action. And even having portraiture done in a location like that. One of my clients, they have a fitness clinic for people with chronic illness, and so a lot of the portraiture was actually done, even like the headshots were done in the clinic, so you can have the background with like the weights and stuff, and like you can
Right.
see the equipment. And so the equipment's blurred out a little bit, so it's a little, the attention's on the clinic owner, but the background is also telling a story there, so it's speaking to what she does, because you can see it in the background.
Mhm.
So some of those kinds of things you can do with the storytelling. If you're doing it on social media, you want to do some storytelling on social media. A lot of times people will have themes. So for me, for example, my themes are things like brand photography, preparing for it. What do you wear? How do you feel more confident in front of the camera? Those kinds of things. So then you can create images that tell that story as
Mhm.
well. So for your clinic owners, it might be, trying to think about that. Might be something like, just certain things, tips for for doing some of the exercises, or maybe if they're nervous about coming in, how can they
Right.
relax, or,
Yeah.
those kinds of things. You can actually create images that speak to that story. So when you have a caption on social media, you can pair it with an image that
Mm.
supports that
Yeah.
story. And same thing with newsletters too. Like a newsletter, you want to talk about something, you can actually create images to support that part of the newsletter, and that sort of thing.
What do clients need to prepare before
Mhm.
working with a brand photographer? Like what would help them prepare and like maximize their session?
Yeah, it's helpful if they know their brand pretty
Hmm.
well. So even something as simple as brand colors are really important, because if you set up a whole brand shoot and then you change colors completely, now you need new photos.
Okay. Yeah.
If you want to maximize your photos and get more use out of them, it's helpful if you do know the brand. But even something as simple as kind of the brand mood and aesthetic, because I had one client who, when she first started, she kind of went with what she called a vanilla style. It was kind of like very white, very bright and airy,
Mhm.
that kind of stuff. And then her brand evolved to weird, funky, neon pink, neon green, like a really totally, like, she actually embraced that before. She wasn't, I don't think she quite had the courage to embrace that right off the bat. Right. And so that she needed new photos then, because the photos she had were speaking to that other brand. Right.
Yeah.
And so it's helpful if what kind of words do you want people to use to describe your brand? What even personality traits do you want to bring out? Do you want to be fun? Do you want to be serene? Like, what kind of traits do you want people to see in the images and stuff like that? And sometimes it requires a little bit of research, asking your clients how they feel about the brand, what words they'd use to describe it, and then making sure that those words are what you want to
Mm.
be them to be using. But yeah, it helps to have that kind of stuff. And then also, it really helps to have a strategy. So knowing what your marketing is going to be like for the next 3 months to a year, ideally a year if you can, because then you can get more imagery tailored to actually support all of those things. But let's say you've got sales coming up. You're offering a new program, you're offering a new service, or maybe there's certain services that you want to really promote in December or in January. So knowing what those are, you can actually create images to support the marketing for that. So any of your social media themes. So it's good to have a strategy and kind of brainstorm ideas of what you need images for, and then that helps. When we're doing the planning, we can go, okay, well, if you want images of that, we should do your photo shoot here, and we should make sure we bring in some models or people that like our friends and family that can pretend to be
Yeah.
clients, that sort of thing. So yeah, it helps a lot with the planning if you've got
Yeah.
a good feel for what you need images for. And sometimes too, it even is involves, like, say, like you too, like you might be like, well, I'm building your website, I need this and this, like I need images for here, here, and here. And so that can influence the brand photography too, because I'm like,
Mhm.
okay, we need to make sure we get a good banner image, it needs to have this in it.
Yeah, we actually just worked on a project like that where the our client was able to access a brand photographer, and we were like, we
Nice.
kind of picked some stock images. We kind of used some stock images, and we used some old images of hers as well to kind of create like almost like help create a bit of like a shot list for her
Oh yeah,
photography
nice.
session, because we were like, well, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
like we want you to be assessing a knee in this picture, and you're offering bracing, so we need to make sure that like you
Oh,
have
okay,
pictures of
yeah.
braces, or like you fitting braces, or then they were doing some like
Mm-hmm.
orthotics and other, anyway, like basically we
Yeah.
were able to kind of like pull some stock images, like create some unique perspectives, and then worked with a brand photographer like in the town she's from, and it was amazing. Like the results were so much better than you could have ever
Yeah.
gotten with stock photos. And like you said, like wearing the right
Mm-hmm.
colors and
Yeah.
just so many things. Like I honestly feel like you'll spend more time looking for
Mhm.
stock images that have less impact than you would doing one photo shoot, like one custom photo shoot. And that doesn't even start talking about your marketing strategy, where you're like, oh, I'm actually
Yeah.
thinking ahead for like another year. So it goes far beyond even just a website. It's like, what do you need for
Yeah.
the next, 3 to 9 months?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And also too, the challenge with stock photography is you don't often have the right client avatar in there either. Like the
Mhm.
client I had that had people with chronic illness, like you don't want, young 20-year-olds that are super
Fitness
thin and
models.
super fit, right? A model.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And so what they did is they actually had some other clients volunteer to be models for us. And so that just really helps their actual like their newer ideal clients they want to bring in, see who's
Mm.
there and go, oh, that's me. I belong there, you know?
Yeah. And that
So,
speaks to like another thing to like understanding your brand is that if you don't know
mhm.
who your ideal client is, it's really hard to pick an appropriate model that's going to make
Yeah,
your branding like connect or your photography
exactly.
connect with your ideal clients.
Hmm.
Like that's a great point.
Yeah,
Yeah.
totally. Definitely knowing who your ideal client is really important because then you know what'll appeal to them and help them feel like, yes, that's me.
Yeah.
You
And
know?
pick the right models, like the right family and friends
Yeah,
to come be the model.
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Or
Hmm.
even like the right staff member in your clinic to be the model. Because I
Yeah.
know like sometimes you see staff
Hmm.
members or patients
Yeah.
for a clinic photo shoot. Like, and
Totally.
that's okay, right? Like that's I still feel like
Yeah.
that's better than stock
Mhm.
photography is
Oh,
having
totally.
clinicians
And so
treat clinicians.
exactly. Well, sometimes even staff get treatment, so it's not
Totally.
technically incorrect, theoretically. So
Yeah.
you never know. But yeah, no, it's really good to make sure you are picking the right people because if a 40-year-old woman is your ideal client, but you're going with 20-year-olds because that you're bringing your daughter in, to be your model, that may not attract your 40-year-old clients, right? So
Yeah,
yeah.
great point. Okay, so you definitely need to have a good, like a solid understanding of your brand,
Hmm.
going
Yeah,
into a photo
exactly.
shoot, like just
Hmm.
so that you're maximizing your investment, obviously, in your time.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Hmm. Totally.
What kind of questions should they
Yeah.
ask before hiring a photographer?
Yeah, so there'd be a couple things I would look at when you're hiring a photographer. Before we even get to the questions, I'd look at the portfolio.
Mm,
So, does the style match what your brand like? Are the photos what you're looking for? Because photographers have different styles, right? Like some photographers are dark and edgy, some are bright and airy, some are somewhere in between. And there's different color tones to the images. Some people have cooler tones, some people have warmer tones. So it's good to look at the photography, and we can edit for your brand style, but it's good if you see all their whole portfolio is all one particular style and that doesn't match your brand, then
yeah.
they might not be the greatest photographer for you. Second thing to look at is, do the expressions look authentic and relaxed, or do they look stuffy, do they look uncomfortable? So that's another thing to look at, and see if you can get a photographer that has images where people look, like they're getting those authentic smiles and
Yeah.
things like that. And then the third thing to ask would be, what do they do for the planning side of things? Like, do they help you? Do they just show up to your photo shoot and are you responsible for all the planning, or are they going to work with you with that? And how do they do that?
Mhm.
The photographers may have different ways of doing it. For me, I do a brand questionnaire where I ask them a bunch of questions and really dig deep into the brand in terms of things like, what words do you want people to use to describe your brand? What colors are your brand? What are you for and against? What personality traits do you want to bring out? Like, there's a bunch of things that I put in there, and then I put together a Pinterest storyboard with ideas on locations and props and outfits and poses and all that fun stuff. And then we have a planning call and we go, okay, based on what you've got, what you listed here for your strategy or what you want images for, here are some ideas. What is our priority going to be for the day? And which shots do we want to get? What poses do you like? Here's what I recommend for your service area and kind of how you want to come across. But there's different poses that people like and stuff. So that way you can really focus in and maximize your shoot because you're not spending time on things they're not going to like. you know
Yeah.
so that's my process. And then I show up and do the photo shoot. And then I also give them, like, we brainstorm ideas on what props to bring. Because a lot of times they may not have experience with that. So like, oh, I don't know what kind of props to bring. Okay, well, if you're a chiropractor, what tools do you use every day? Those kinds of things. And so I
Yeah.
help them kind of brainstorm those kinds of things, give advice on outfits. Depending on the shoot, I may also advise them to see a stylist if they need some help with styling. But yeah, so kind of maybe asking how they get supported during the brand photography session, and whether the photographer will help them do some strategy beforehand.
Yeah, so just making sure that the photographer themselves has a clear
Mm-hmm.
process, and if
Yeah,
you want that guidance, or you're like, I don't know what to bring, like what do I wear? They
yeah,
should have resources to help you prepare, like
yeah,
answer your questions before the photo, like before the day of the
yeah,
shoot. Essentially, is like,
exactly.
do you have a process? Can you answer my questions before the shoot
Mm-hmm.
so you don't show up to a shoot and are like
Yeah,
totally unprepared, or you weren't wearing the right thing or whatever it is? Because I
exactly,
feel like we get a lot
exactly.
of questions, but like, what should I wear for my photo shoot for the website? I
Yeah.
was like, I don't know. Ask your photographer. I was like, that should be a photographer question.
Yeah.
I was like,
That is
here's
one
your
of the
brand
most common
colors, but
questions. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. I was like, but I don't know the
Yeah.
specifics.
Yeah, I give some general advice, and I have a little booklet I give them that has some tips and ideas. But then if they really want to get specific on, okay, well, I have a pear-shaped body and this is my hair color and skin tone
Yeah.
and that
And
kind of
that's where
stuff.
you
And I'm
bring a
like, well, you know
stylist.
what? I have a couple stylists that are amazing. Here you go.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Are there any like kind of just like general things from like a wardrobe? Because again, that is something that people
Yeah.
ask about. Are there general things that people should kind of steer clear from, mistakes people make?
Yeah, there's definitely a few. I'd say the first thing is wearing something you feel confident in. So if you wear something that you feel like doesn't fit right, or there's like potential for wardrobe malfunctions, like with women, our shirts sometimes gape funny, or
Yeah.
like, things like that. Those are going to make you uncomfortable. That's going to come through in the photography. So you want to wear something that you feel confident in. I think it's probably the number one thing that you want to look at.
Mhm.
Um, Second would be making sure everything fits well. So I recommend making sure it fits a week or two before your shoot, so you have time to go and get new clothes if you need to. Um, Brand colors are important too. So having clothes in your brand colors or in what I call neutral colors. So
Mhm.
like beige, black, white, sometimes navy, depending on the brand. Those kinds of things tend to go very well with a lot of colors.
Mhm.
And so you want to wear clothes that will look good with the rest of your brand colors in your clinic space and stuff like that. And then the other thing would be it has to fit the personality and the role, like what they're doing. So I wouldn't say wear a full business suit in an image where you're working on a client, unless that's what you do. If you do that, then maybe, but I think it's probably unlikely. So wear often what you would wear when you're working with clients as well, right? Because that's what they're going to see you in when they show up. So I think trying to make sure that it fits the story you're telling. This is how I
Mhm.
show up when I'm working with clients. This is how I show up when I'm going networking. You might dress up a little bit more for the headshot. You're going to use on LinkedIn and some other areas where you want that professional look. But yeah, you can also have casual clothes for some of the personal branding stuff. So yeah, I'd say it kind of depends on the shoot and what the story is that's being told.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Yeah. But like say for example, like you're a dentist and you're wearing
yeah,
scrubs to the office, it's like probably your photography should be like your staff in their like in their work
exactly,
scrubs, like what they're actually
exactly.
again, it's you're trying to
Hmm.
the experience or like showcase the experience before they get there. So if you don't treat
Exactly.
in this outfit like ever
Yeah.
or would never in
Exactly.
this like
Yeah,
yeah, business casual attire, don't wear it in your brand photos.
exactly. Or you could
Yeah.
wear it, but you would wear it. And that's why the brand photography sessions are awesome in a way that you can get multiple different
Mhm.
photos. So you could wear the business casual for some nice brand portraits where you're in your clinic and you have that as a background. You're using this as just a shot you might put on your Instagram to talk about, an about me post, or like use it on, your networking directories when part of a bunch of networking groups and stuff. Or if you have your LinkedIn headshot, if you want something simple but professional for that, you can maybe dress it up a little bit for that. But yeah, definitely if you're in the clinic space doing the behind the scenes photos and it's a dentist, then definitely the scrubs, if that's what you wear, would be it would be
Yeah.
ideal.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. It almost sounds like you almost need like kind of levels of formality or like professionalism. Like it would almost be
Yeah.
beneficial to have like
Hmm.
I'm going to use my clients as an example, and they're typically not going to be any more formal than business casual. So it'd be like your
Yeah.
business casual, your like work attire, and then your like active wear, kind of like
Yeah.
lifestyle photos as like
Hmm.
three levels of professionalism or
Exactly.
like formality, I guess.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And then if
Yeah.
you never wear a formal suit, then that would not be ever in your brand photography.
Right. That makes a lot of sense. It would feel
Yeah.
so off. It would be very off brand, hey?
Yeah. Unless that fit the brand, but I don't think, yeah. For a clinician, for example, that it likely wouldn't. So yeah, definitely only wearing what feels like it fits on brand.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Are there any other kind of mistakes that clients make prior to brand photo shoots that maybe aren't necessarily wardrobe related? Anything else that you're like,
Um,
oh, you should consider this beforehand?
yeah. Yeah, one of them has to do with, preparing before the shoot. If people leave it to the last minute, like the night before or the morning of, then they end up often coming with this kind of frantic energy.
Mm,
Now I can calm them down. I do have like a meditation I have to do with my clients to kind of ground them before we start, but it's really helpful if you can be organized beforehand so that you can So you can show up in a good energy because your energy is going to show through the images. So if you haven't gotten a good night's sleep or those kinds of things, that's going to come through, you know? So you really want to make sure you do some self-care before the photo shoot, get some good night sleep for at least a couple nights, ideally a week, hydrate, so your skin will look good and you have energy and those kinds of things. So yeah.
Yeah. So be nice to yourself a week before.
Yeah.
Okay.
Ideally all the
Sleep
time,
well,
but
eat well. Yeah. But if you're really going to choose a week to do it, you should do it a week before you get your photos taken.
Exactly. Exactly.
Awesome. So what are some of the key ways businesses can use their brand photos to strengthen their online presence? Like what role does photography play?
Yeah, so you want to use them pretty much everywhere you can possibly think of.
Hmm.
So it can be on your email signature, right? Having a nice image of you there. It could be in on your obviously your social media, so in your feed, in your stories, the profile picture that's on your social media, like that little circle,
Yep.
having
Bio
it there,
photo.
and I often recommend having one photo across all your platforms for that circular profile photo to show consistency. So when people are looking for you, they're like, oh yeah, there she is, because they recognize that image.
Mhm.
But yeah, so putting them there also all over social media, networking groups, for podcast guesting and stuff like that. You can always give them to the podcast hosts and stuff like that. If you're speaking at events, you can give them there. You can put it in print materials too. So you can have templates, for trade shows, even have like, big banners and stuff like that for your trade shows.
Yep.
Other things might be to like getting it published in magazines and stuff like that. So if you're writing an article on something related to a particular health and wellness topic, you could have a good image of yourself there. And it could be one of the brand portrait ones that has the clinic in the background, or just things that kind of speak to what you do. Um, yeah, so a lot of places you could use them in your newsletters and blog articles as well. So those are good. Those are good, great places to have them too. So people can actually see your clinic when you're talking about a particular service
Mhm.
or something that you are offering. It's like, okay, here's an exact picture of that person doing it,
Yeah.
from that clinic.
Yeah.
So
Well, it sounds like
yeah.
it's good to have, like you call them, like behind the scenes, like you treating
Hmm.
patients or working with clients photos, but then there is
Yeah.
almost this element of like personal branding for you as a
Hmm.
therapist, where like that's where the headshot, I'm gonna call them headshots for lack of a better term. Like you
Sure.
can see it in the background, like of your
Yeah.
like Zoom screen, is that if you have those like consistent photos of you as a therapist, then you can actually like
Hmm.
put those on all of your on your all sorry on all of your platforms, so that you're kind of building your personal brand alongside your clinic brand as well.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. And creating like
Yeah.
that connection and recognition with your own face.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's really important for that. And it's
Yeah.
even something as simple as like your business card, for example. Like if you go to networking events because you're the person doing all the networking, then a lot of times people forget who they met at the networking event, but as soon as they see the face, the picture, they're like, oh
Mhm.
yeah, yeah, I remember talking to that person. And there's just that trust again that you build.
Yeah.
So yeah.
How do you make sure that the final images like really reflect that unique personality and like the mission of a brand? I feel like we've touched on a little bit because you've got really good
Mhm.
processes, obviously. Um, but like, how do you know that your brand photos are on brand? How do you make sure that that is consistent?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of things there. So the strategy and process is important. So you do a lot of prep beforehand to make sure that you've got the right locations, you've got the right outfits and poses and all of that fun stuff. And also that your photographer knows what you're looking for so that they know what kind of poses to put you into, what kind of expressions, do we want to get you laughing? Do we want to get you serious? Like what do we want? So I think really doing a lot of planning beforehand with you and your photographer is really important, and doing all the strategy you've done before as well with the branding, right? So making sure your
Mm.
brand is solid, you understand the brand so you can communicate that to the photographer. And then I'd say like for consistency going forward is you want to pick photographers who have similar styles. So if you don't use the same one, then you want to make sure that they have a similar style and that sort of thing. So ideally, you're using the same ones best because then you can kind of keep it consistent. They also really get to know your brand inside out. So then it's less work for you because, they know your brand. So if you need to get more photos done each year,
Mhm.
that kind of thing, then you can do it with someone who knows the brand well. But yeah, I would say just making sure you've got a consistent color tones, contrast, brightness, style of image overall, and then yeah, just be really strategic about bringing in those important elements of the brand.
Yeah.
And you can always ask people too and be like, hey, here's, what did you think of the website? What words would you describe my business? So you could
Mhm.
actually do some, what would you call that?
Market research.
Market research. Yes,
Yeah.
you could do market research
Yeah.
after you've done some of that stuff and go, okay, is this landing with people?
How often do you feel like people should really like update their brand photography? Do you find that there's like a certain kind of timeline where things start to look outdated, where you're like, no, you should just like every 3 years or every year? What have you found?
I think it varies. I think if you change hairstyles a lot, then every time you change your hairstyle.
Fair enough.
So because otherwise people really don't recognize you. So there's a real disconnect if you suddenly have short hair
Yeah,
and
okay.
or it's a different color. So yeah, if there's changes to that or the staff, right? So if you've got new
Mhm.
staff, it's good to get some more photos to show those new staff members, get new headshots, stuff like that, and have that consistency. So then you're not having all these different kinds of headshots from people just bringing in photos from wherever they had them taken. Having consistency is ideal. And then sometimes it can be 3 years, like it depends, right? Like I have images I still use from 5 years ago that are my iconic brand photography, and my hair has kind of stayed the same. So it
It
still looks
works.
like quite a bit like me. So it's like there's no difference right now. But yeah, I guess if you're getting older or looking different, like if there's a change to your appearance, that's a good time to do it. And then also depending on how much content you need too, right? So if you're very active on social media, then maybe you need to do it every month to every couple months, maybe a couple times a year. And it also depends on the photography session, because I have some people where we book an entire day and we do multiple outfits, multiple locations, multiple poses behind the scenes, bring in different models or family or friends,
Mhm.
you
Yeah.
know, to be our models. But, just getting a ton of variety. So no one actually knows that you did that all in one day. Right.
Great.
And so then you can use it for maybe a year, right? Or 2 years, even depending on how much content you get.
Mhm.
So yeah, I'd say it really depends on how big the photography session is, how many different looks you get, and whether you have enough content for all your needs
Oh
too.
yeah.
Your new product coming out, new service, you don't have images of that, then you might need new photos for that too.
Yeah. If you're like all of a sudden offering like, I don't know, like a pre or postnatal class that you
Yeah,
weren't before, like that would be a good time to be like, to start
exactly.
getting some new
Hmm.
images. Yeah. Yeah.
Or you brought on an acupuncturist and you didn't have one before, and now you need some images to kind of speak
Right.
to that potentially, and the images of her or him,
Yeah.
as well.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Oh, great point.
mhm.
Okay, well, I feel like that's all we have time for today. Thank you, Lindsay, so much for being our guest and just sharing so many good tips. I feel like I learned lots about brand photography and just even things I hadn't thought about. So thank you.
You're
Um,
welcome.
how can people connect with you online or how could they reach out to you? What's the best way to find you?
Yeah, they can email me at info@thesmallbusinessphotographer.com, or they can find me on my website, which is www.thesmallbusinessphotographer.com. And then I'm also on Instagram, which would be at the small business photographer. Yeah,
Great.
thank you so much for having me here. I
Yeah.
love talking about this.
Yeah, this is awesome. We will make sure we put all those links into the show notes as well, so those will exist there. Just want to thank everyone for watching, and we'll see you next time.
Bye, everyone.